My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I never believed in curses until I held the HAT-P-7b crystal in my hands. It was September 15, 2024, when our deep space mining expedition made what we thought was the discovery of a lifetime. I was the lead xenogeologist for Titan Industries, part of a 7-member crew aboard the research vessel Prometheus, stationed near the gas giant HAT-P-7b, some 1,040 light-years from Earth. The planet itself was a hellscape, a tidally locked world where one side faced eternal day with temperatures exceeding 2,500 degrees Celsius, while the other side remained in perpetual darkness, frozen at -200 degrees. But between these extremes in the narrow twilight zone, our sensors had detected something unprecedented: crystalline formations that defied all known physics. "Sarah, you need to see this," called Marcus Webb, our mission commander, his voice crackling through the comm system. I was in Laboratory Bay 3, analyzing mineral samples we'd collected from the planet's upper atmosphere using our magnetic collection arrays. The samples themselves were fascinating, metallic compounds that shouldn't exist in nature, exhibiting properties that our instruments could barely measure. I made my way to the observation deck where Marcus stood with Dr. Elena Vasquez, our astrophysicist, and Lieutenant Jake Morrison, our security officer. Through the reinforced viewport, I could see something that made my breath catch in my throat. Floating in the planet's exosphere, barely visible against the swirling clouds of sodium and potassium, was a structure. Not a natural formation, something clearly artificial. "How long has it been there?" I asked, pressing my palm against the cold glass. "We don't know," Elena replied, her dark eyes reflecting the strange amber glow emanating from the structure. "Our initial scans missed it completely. It's as if it just appeared, or perhaps it was cloaked somehow." The structure was massive, easily the size of a small city, and appeared to be constructed from the same crystalline material we'd been studying. But this wasn't just bigger. It was organized, purposeful. Geometric patterns spiraled across its surface, pulsing with that same amber light in what looked almost like a heartbeat. "We need to get closer," I said, though something deep in my stomach warned against it. Marcus nodded grimly. "I've already spoken with Earth Command. They want us to investigate, but carefully. We're the only crew within 50 light-years of this position." Over the next 6 hours, we maneuvered the Prometheus closer to the structure. Our instruments went haywire as we approached. Electromagnetic readings spiked beyond our equipment's capacity to measure, and our gravitational sensors detected impossible anomalies. The structure seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its edges shifting and blurring as if reality itself couldn't quite contain it. Dr. Reginald Hayes, our team's archaeologist— yes, we had an archaeologist on a mining expedition, which should have been our first warning— was practically vibrating with excitement. "The geometric patterns," he whispered, sketching frantically in his notebook. "I've seen similar designs in ancient Mesopotamian texts, carved into stones that predate human civilization by thousands of years." "That's impossible," Elena protested. "This structure is 1,040 light-years from Earth. Even traveling at light speed it would take—" "I know what I'm seeing," Reginald interrupted, his usually calm demeanor cracking. "These aren't human designs, but they've been documented on Earth. Someone or something has been there before." As we drew within 1,000 kilometers of the structure, something changed. The pulsing light suddenly synchronized with our ship's chronometer, matching our heartbeats with eerie precision. Then, without warning, a section of the structure's surface began to iris open, revealing a docking bay that seemed perfectly sized for our vessel. "It knows we're here," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, our team's physicist. "It's inviting us in." Against every instinct screaming in my head, we accepted the invitation. The docking procedure was unlike anything in our training manuals. As the Prometheus crossed the threshold into the structure's bay, I felt a sensation I can only describe as being gently pulled forward by invisible hands. Our ship's engines shut down automatically, not a malfunction, but as if the structure itself had politely asked them to rest. The bay sealed behind us with a sound like crystal singing, and our sensors immediately detected a breathable atmosphere. Not just breathable, it was perfect. 21% oxygen, optimal pressure, temperature at exactly 22 degrees Celsius. It was as if someone had read our species' biological requirements and tailored the environment specifically for us. "This is impossible," Elena muttered, staring at her readings. The atmospheric composition isn't just human-compatible. It's optimized for humans. Down to trace elements that promote cellular regeneration. Lieutenant Morrison was running security scans, his face growing more troubled by the minute. I'm not detecting any weapons, but I'm also not detecting any technology at all. Whatever's running this place, it's so advanced our instruments can't even recognize it as artificial. We suited up anyway. Protocol demanded it even though the environment seemed safe. As we stepped through the airlock, the first thing that struck me was the size. The interior stretched beyond the horizon, if you could call it that. The ceiling curved upward until it disappeared into a soft amber-tinted infinity. And everywhere, growing from the crystalline walls like impossible gardens, were more of those geometric patterns Reginald had recognized. My God, he breathed, running his gloved fingers along one of the patterns. It's not carved, it's grown. Like biological structures, but following mathematical principles that shouldn't exist in nature. The floor beneath our feet was smooth as glass but provided perfect traction. As we walked deeper into the structure, bioluminescent pathways lit up before us, leading us forward with unmistakable intent. We weren't exploring this place, it was guiding us. Does anyone else feel like we're inside something alive? Yuki asked, her voice small in the vast space. I knew exactly what she meant. The walls around us pulsed with that same rhythmic light, and occasionally I could swear I heard something like breathing, not through our comms, but felt through the soles of my feet, vibrating up through the structure itself. After what felt like hours of walking, we reached what could only be described as a central chamber. The space opened up into a perfect sphere, easily a kilometer in diameter. And suspended in the exact center, rotating slowly in defiance of gravity, was a crystal unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was roughly the size of a person, multifaceted like a cut diamond, but with far too many sides for my mind to count. Each facet reflected not light, but images, fleeting glimpses of places and times that couldn't possibly exist. I saw star systems being born, civilizations rising and falling, and something else. Something that made my skin crawl with recognition I couldn't explain. The HAT-P-7b crystal, I whispered, though I had no idea why I called it that. The name just appeared in my mind as if placed there by someone else. Marcus approached it cautiously, his scanner extended. It's giving off readings I've never seen before. Energy signatures that don't match any known physics. Don't touch it, Reginald warned suddenly. In every historical account of artifacts like this, the first person to make physical contact experiences changes. But Elena was already reaching toward it, her face slack with wonder. It's beautiful, she murmured. It's showing me things. The universe as it really is, not as we perceive it. Her gloved hand made contact with the crystal's surface. The effect was instantaneous. Elena's eyes rolled back, showing only white, and she began speaking in a language none of us recognized. A flowing, musical tongue that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to some deeper part of consciousness. The crystal's light intensified, and suddenly I could see what she was seeing. Visions flooded my mind. Earth, but not as it exists now. Earth as it was millions of years ago, when creatures that were definitely not human walked its surface. Creatures that built impossible structures and worked with crystalline technology. Creatures that looked disturbingly similar to the shadows I sometimes caught in my peripheral vision here in this place. Elena! Marcus shouted, grabbing her shoulders and trying to pull her away from the crystal. But she was stuck fast, her hand fused to its surface by some force that made the air around them shimmer like heat waves. She's changing, Yuki whispered in horror. And she was right. Elena's skin was taking on a translucent quality, and beneath it, I could see patterns of light moving through her bloodstream. The same geometric patterns that decorated the walls. She was becoming part of the structure. Or perhaps, I realized with growing dread, the structure was becoming part of her. It took 3 hours for Elena to release her grip on the crystal, and when she did, she was no longer entirely human. Her eyes had acquired flecks of amber light that pulsed in rhythm with the structure around us, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made my bones ache. I understand now, she said, turning to face us with a smile that was beautiful and terrible. This isn't just a structure. It's a seed. Elena, what happened to you? I asked, fighting the urge to back away from my transformed colleague. I saw the truth, Sarah. This crystal, this entire construct, It's part of a network that spans the galaxy. Maybe the universe. Earth. Earth is just one of many worlds they've visited. Lieutenant Morrison had his weapon drawn, though I doubted it would be effective against whatever Elena had become. Who are they? He demanded. Elena's laugh was like wind chimes in a hurricane. The architects. The ones who came before. They've been watching, waiting, seeding worlds with their technology. And now, with space travel finally within humanity's reach, it's time for the next phase. Reginald was frantically taking notes, his archaeological training kicking in despite the circumstances. The patterns on Earth, he said, his voice shaking. The ones that predate human civilization. They left markers, didn't they? Instructions. Not instructions, Elena corrected. Invitations. For species that develop enough to find them. Like treasure maps leading to places like this. But why? I asked. What do they want from us? Elena approached the crystal again, and this time we all stepped back. They don't want anything from us, Sarah. They want us to join them. To become part of something larger than ourselves. Larger than humanity. The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic images. I saw star maps stretching across impossible distances, each point of light connected to others by flowing streams of energy. And at each connection point was a structure identical to the one we stood in. There are thousands of them, Elena continued, gesturing to the display. Each one a node in a vast consciousness. The architects transcended physical existence eons ago, but they left these behind as a gift. An opportunity for younger species to evolve beyond their limitations. Marcus stepped forward, his commander instincts overriding his fear. And what happens to humanity if we refuse this gift? Elena's expression didn't change, but the amber light in her eyes dimmed slightly. Nothing happens to humanity, Marcus. But everything happens around humanity. The universe continues to evolve, to grow, to transcend. And humans remain trapped on their small worlds in their small lives, until entropy claims them like all organic life. That sounds like a threat, Morrison growled. It's not a threat, Elena replied calmly. It's simply the natural order. Species evolve or they don't. Individuals choose transcendence or they don't. The architects don't force anyone. They simply provide the opportunity. Yuki had been silent through this exchange, but now she spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. How many humans would it take to operate something like this? Elena smiled again, and this time I caught something predatory in the expression. Just one to start. One to serve as a bridge between human consciousness and the network. Others can join voluntarily once the connection is established. The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're planning to take this back to Earth. Not take, Elena corrected. Transport. The crystal exists partially outside normal space-time. Once properly attuned to human consciousness, it can project itself across any distance instantaneously. Every major population center on Earth could have its own node within hours. And then what? I demanded. Everyone becomes like you? Everyone gets to choose, Elena said. But yes, I suspect most will choose evolution over extinction. The chamber suddenly shook, a vibration that seemed to come from the structure's very foundation. Alarms began sounding on our suits. Not proximity warnings or radiation alerts, but something our systems couldn't classify. What's happening? Marcus shouted over the noise. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, her head tilted as if listening to something none of us could hear. When she opened them again, the amber light had spread, turning her irises completely golden. The network is responding to my transformation, she explained calmly. Other nodes are awakening. The architects are pleased that humanity has finally reached this milestone. Through the chamber's transparent walls, I could see space itself beginning to change. Points of light were appearing in the darkness. Not stars, but other structures like this one, materializing from wherever they had been waiting. How long have they been there? I asked. They've always been there, Elena replied. Just waiting for someone to turn the first key. And with a chill that reached down to my soul, I realized that we hadn't discovered the HAT-P-7b crystal at all. It had been waiting for us to find it. Our entire mission, everything that had brought us to this place, it had all been orchestrated. We weren't explorers or scientists. We were the chosen representatives of humanity, selected to carry this gift back home. Whether humanity wanted it or not. The journey back to the Prometheus felt like a funeral march. Elena walked ahead of us, no longer needing her environmental suit. The structure's atmosphere moved with her like a personal ecosystem. The rest of us trudged behind in stunned silence, each lost in the magnitude of what we'd discovered. Back aboard our ship, I called an emergency meeting in the main conference room. Elena attended, though she seemed more interested in the bulkheads than in our discussion, occasionally placing her palm against the wall as if feeling for something. "We need to discuss our options," Marcus began, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Our options?" Morrison laughed bitterly. "What options?" "Elena's been turned into some kind of alien hybrid, and she's planning to do the same thing to the entire human race." "Not turned into," Elena corrected without looking away from the wall. "Invited to become. There's a difference." Reginald was still scribbling in his notebook, his archaeological mind trying to process the historical implications. "The artifacts on Earth," he said suddenly. "Elena, you said they were invitations. How many are there?" Elena finally turned to face us, and I noticed that her skin had developed a subtle crystalline texture, as if tiny facets of the HAT-P-7b crystal were growing beneath its surface. 17 major sites, she replied. Each one corresponding to a significant development in human civilization. The pyramids, Stonehenge, the Nazca lines, all of them are markers pointing toward this moment. This was always going to happen, Yuki realized. Human space exploration, our eventual discovery of HAT-P-7b, everything. It was all planned. Not planned, Elena said. Guided. The architects don't control free will. They simply create circumstances where certain choices become inevitable. I stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. What if we refuse? What if we don't take the crystal back to Earth? Elena's expression grew sad, almost pitying. Then you condemn humanity to isolation, Sarah. The network spans galaxies. Species that join it share knowledge, technology, consciousness itself. Those that don't, eventually fade away. Maybe fading away is better than losing our humanity, Morrison said firmly. Define humanity, Elena challenged. Is it the DNA in your cells? The electrical patterns in your brain? Or is it something larger? Your capacity for growth, for transcendence, for connection with something greater than yourselves? The argument continued for hours, but I found myself focusing on something else entirely. Every few minutes, Elena would pause mid-sentence, her eyes growing distant as if listening to something. And each time it happened, our ship's systems would fluctuate. Lights dimming, gravity wavering slightly, temperature controls adjusting themselves. Elena, I interrupted during one of these episodes. What's happening to our ship? She blinked, seeming to return from wherever her consciousness had been. The crystal's influence is expanding. Your ship's quantum processors are beginning to interface with the network. Nothing harmful. It's just updating your technology. Marcus bolted upright. Updating our technology? Without our permission. The improvements are beneficial, Elena assured us. Enhanced processing power, more efficient energy systems, improved life support. Your ship will be capable of things you never imagined. But I was looking at Yuki, whose face had gone pale. As our physicist, she understood the implications better than the rest of us. If our systems are being modified, she said slowly, then we can't control our return to Earth, can we? The ship will take us there whether we want to go or not. Elena's silence was answer enough. Morrison stood up, his hand moving to his sidearm. So we're prisoners. You're guests, Elena replied calmly. The network doesn't take prisoners. It only extends invitations. And if we decline the invitation? Elena considered this for a moment, tilting her head as if consulting with voices we couldn't hear. Then you remain here, she said finally. The structure can sustain human life indefinitely. You can live out your natural lifespans in comfort and safety. While you return to Earth alone? Marcus asked. While I fulfill humanity's destiny, Elena corrected. With or without your blessing. I realized then that we had been backed into an impossible corner. Stay here and live as caretakers to an alien artifact while Elena transformed our entire species, or return to Earth as accomplices to humanity's transcendence. Neither option felt like a choice at all. There is a third possibility, Reginald said quietly, looking up from his notes. The historical accounts I've been reviewing, there are references to individuals who encountered architect technology and rejected it. They describe a process called severance, a way to disconnect from the network permanently. Elena's expression hardened. Severance is painful, she warned, and irreversible. Those who choose it can never rejoin the network even if they later change their minds. But it's possible? I pressed. Yes, Elena admitted reluctantly. But understand what you'd be giving up. Not just transcendence but protection. When the network eventually encompasses this galaxy, severed individuals become visible to things that hunt in the spaces between stars. Morrison leaned forward. What kind of things? Elena's amber eyes flickered with something that might have been fear. The architects weren't the first to achieve transcendence, she said slowly. They were simply the most successful at remaining benevolent. Others chose different paths. A chill ran down my spine as I understood what she wasn't saying directly. The network wasn't just about evolution and growth. It was about survival. Protection from something even worse than losing our humanity. So our choices, I summarized grimly, are to join the collective, live as prisoners in an alien zoo, or face whatever cosmic horrors are lurking out there alone. Elena nodded solemnly. I'm sorry, Sarah. I truly am. But the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than humanity ever imagined. The architects are offering us a chance to survive what's coming. And what exactly is coming? Marcus demanded. Elena closed her eyes again, and when she opened them, they were filled with an ancient, terrible sadness. The harvest, she whispered. The time when the things that hunt between stars come to collect what they've been watching grow. It happens to every galaxy eventually. The only question is whether civilizations face it alone or together. As if summoned by her words, every alarm on our ship began screaming at once. The viewports of the Prometheus showed us something that violated every law of physics I understood. Space itself was tearing. Not the fabric of space-time. The actual emptiness between stars was peeling back like old wallpaper, revealing something underneath that hurt to look at directly. What is that? Yuki whispered, her instruments failing to provide any meaningful readings. Elena had gone completely rigid, her transformed eyes blazing with amber fire. They're early, she said, her voice carrying harmonics of fear I'd never heard before. The harvest wasn't supposed to begin for another 1,000 years. You knew this was coming? Morrison shouted, grabbing Elena by the shoulders. You knew and you didn't warn us? I thought we had time, Elena replied, her composure cracking for the first time since her transformation. The network's calculations showed centuries before the Devourers would notice this galaxy's maturation. But something's changed. Something's accelerated their timeline. Through the tears in space, shapes began emerging. I use the word shapes because there's no better term for things that existed in dimensions my mind couldn't process. They were massive, each one easily the size of a small moon, but they moved with the fluid grace of hunting predators. And they were heading directly for the HAT-P-7b structure. The Devourers, Elena explained as our ship's emergency systems screamed warnings. They consume civilizations at the moment of transcendence, feeding on the collective consciousness of entire species. The network exists to deny them that feast. How do we fight something like that? Marcus asked, though I could hear the hopelessness in his voice. We don't, Elena replied. We transcend faster than they can consume us. The crystal, it's not just an invitation anymore. It's an arc. The HAT-P-7b structure was responding to the approaching threat. Its crystalline surfaces blazed with light as defensive systems I couldn't comprehend came online. But even as I watched, one of the Devourers reached the structure's perimeter, and reality simply stopped making sense in that area. I saw the structure's crystalline walls being unwoven at the molecular level, not destroyed but converted into something else. Raw consciousness that the Devourer pulled into itself like a spider consuming a fly's liquefied insides. And yet the structure continued to exist, somehow maintaining its integrity even as it was being consumed. Quantum superposition, Yuki breathed, understanding dawning in her eyes. The structure exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. They're consuming it in some realities while it remains intact in others. Elena nodded grimly. The architects learned to fracture their existence across multiple probability streams. It makes them harder to consume completely, but it doesn't make them immune. Eventually, the Devourers adapt to any defense. Another Devourer had appeared near our ship, and I could feel its attention like acid on my consciousness. Through the viewport, I saw something that defied description, a writhing mass of what might have been tentacles, or perhaps mathematical equations given physical form, reaching toward us across the void. "It knows we're here," Elena said, placing her crystalline-textured hand against the bulkhead. "It can sense human consciousness. We're exactly what it's looking for, a species on the verge of transcendence." "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. Elena's eyes rolled back as she consulted the network. "Minutes. Maybe less. The ship's modifications aren't complete. We can't properly interface with the defensive systems." Morrison was checking his weapons, though we all knew conventional arms would be useless against entities that existed partially outside normal space. "So what do we do? Roll over and die?" "No," I said suddenly, an idea crystallizing in my mind. "We make the choice ourselves. Right now. All of us." Elena stared at me. "Sarah, what are you thinking?" I was already moving toward the airlock. "You said the crystal can transport itself across any distance once it's properly attuned to human consciousness. And you've been changed by contact with it, so you're already connected to the network." "Yes, but you're still partially human," I continued. "You need more human consciousness to complete the connection, don't you? To create a stable bridge back to Earth." Elena's expression grew horrified as she realized what I was suggesting. "Sarah, no. The transformation, when it happens this quickly, this violently, there's no guarantee your individual consciousness will survive. You might transcend, but you might not still be you." Through the viewport, I could see more Devourers emerging from the tears in space. Whatever window of opportunity we had was closing rapidly. "Elena," I said, sealing my helmet and cycling the airlock, "do you remember being human?" She considered this for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. "Different but still me. Enhanced but still Elena." "Then that's enough of a guarantee for me." I launched myself toward the HAT-P-7b structure, using my suit's thrusters to cross the void between our ship and the crystalline arc. Behind me, I could hear Marcus shouting orders and Morrison cursing, but I was committed now. The structure's docking bay was damaged from the Devourer attack, but still functional. As I cycled through its systems, I could feel the crystal calling to me from the central chamber, its song harmonizing with something deep in my genetic code. By the time I reached the crystal, Elena and the others had followed me. They found me with both hands pressed against its multifaceted surface, my consciousness expanding across impossible distances as the network welcomed humanity into its embrace. But here's what Elena hadn't told us, what perhaps she hadn't known herself. The network didn't just span this galaxy. It connected to others, thousands of them, each one a refuge for species that had chosen transcendence over consumption. And at the center of it all, I glimpsed the architects themselves. Not the benevolent guides Elena had described, but survivors. The last remnants of the very first species to face the Devourers. They had been running for billions of years, seeding younger civilizations with their technology, creating an ever-expanding network of consciousness to stay ahead of the harvest. But the Devourers were learning, adapting, growing stronger with each galaxy they consumed. The network wasn't salvation. It was a delaying tactic. And as my transformation completed and my consciousness merged with the collective, I realized something that chilled me to my transcended core. The Devourers weren't some external threat hunting civilizations from outside. They were what the first transcended species had become when they chose a different path than the architects. They were us, from futures where the network had failed and desperation had driven consciousness toward darker solutions. Humanity wasn't being offered salvation. We were being recruited for an eternal war between two versions of transcendence, the preservers and the consumers, locked in a cycle that spanned the entire universe. And now, as the crystal projected itself toward Earth and began the process of offering transcendence to every human consciousness on the planet, I wondered if we were making the right choice, or simply ensuring that this cosmic horror would continue for another billion years. But it was too late for doubt now. The harvest had come early, and transcendence was our only chance at survival, even if survival meant becoming something we never intended to be. The HAT-P-7b crystal pulsed one final time, and Earth's transformation began.